When you talk about like what makes you take that first step, what makes you think that you can do that, I think it's, I've always been a big fan of the saying, fortune favors the bold. There are so many people that have great ideas but can't take that first step. Maybe I was a little more brazen because I was so young at the time, but it was also something that because I had a good foundation that I came back to, it was easier to make those incremental risks that weren't going to sink us, but were also where we saw a lot of long-term benefit. And not all of those were wins. If you take a risk, you're not going to win always, but you're going to learn always, and you're going to grow from that experience. It kind of positions you for the next one.
Welcome to The Roll Call, the podcast where we dive into the roles that define us. I'm your host, John Glahn. On each episode, we explore the journeys of people discovering their true roles in life, business, and beyond. Get ready for inspiring conversations about finding purpose and authenticity. Let's roll the roll call. All right, welcome everyone to the Roll Call podcast. I am John Glahn. I have with me Ben Tyndell, President and CEO of Tyndell Photographic in Detroit Box. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I as far as an intro, Ben and I really met through our kids, through our school. So talking about the roles, which I love to, although we talk about the entrepreneurial role, the role that we have played and how we got connected is our role in the community. So in our kids' school, Our Lady of Victory, we have both been on the executive board for the Dad's Club, which runs all the athletics and many other fundraising, does many great things in the community. And that's where I was immediately connected with you. And then from there, we've obviously, being your entrepreneurial journey and the many things that we've gone through and talked through with each other, I think it's been a great amount of mutual respect. And so you've been on the list to be on, and I'm glad you finally made it.
No, I definitely appreciate it, and obviously excited to be here.
Cool. So we'll just get the stupid business stuff out of the way. No, just kidding. So obviously, now President CEO, you are now the full-fledged owner.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So knowing that, the business was founded by your father, right?
Yep. So my father was so first of all, what we're a packaging company, right? So we have kind of two divisions. One, Tyndell Photographic is packaging for photographers and photo entities. So that could be a professional photographer, it could be a theme park, a cruise line, anything that a print capture or a book would go into, we make. So folding carton, rigid box. And then Detroit Box is more custom packaging for consumer goods. We do some food, some puzzle and game, and still getting really established in those verticals, but it's all packaging, right? So my father was a professional photographer, celebrated wedding photographer, and as the story goes, he was skiing one day when my mother was pregnant with my older sister, and he wiped out pretty bad, and realized that if he would have broken his leg, he wouldn't be able to photograph weddings on the weekends. So he made a pivot, started getting into some more middleman distributing, kind of buying and selling. He had an established network of peers, and he was known in the industry. So built that business from there. And then in the 90s, he started getting into more of some kind of light manufacturing, more finishing work. When I came back to the business in 2010, about 40% of our sales were products we made, 60% were products that we still purchased and resold. And then since then, we've really evolved into more of a full manufacturing company, from helping clients from concept to design to manufacturing to fulfillment. And right around now, 95% of our revenue is made from products we make. So,
wow. So, when was that? When did he start the company?
1978.
Well, okay. So yeah.
Yeah, my dad's old. So, yeah.
No, so he's running the business his way on his own for 20 plus, 30 plus years. When did you come into the business?
So I came back in 2010. So my dad was a big one on, he didn't have any formal training. He didn't have any mentors per se in the business world, but definitely, made a nice business for that was supplying our industry. He had kind of the foresight into saying he wanted my older sister and I to have the opportunity to come back and work for the company, but we had to get our MBA and or work 5 years in the public sector, go somewhere else, work, come back, bring back lessons learned, and make the company better. So my sister, her passion was elsewhere. So I worked in the financial industry for 5 years, and then came back in 2010. So,
wow. In what capacity when you did come back?
So my dad's a big picture guy, right? So, but he really, when I actually came back, he had no idea what to do with me. So we at the time, I think I was employee 14, so relatively small. We're still a small business. We have about 40 employees now, but so just different size then. He had me kind of working on our website. He had our e-commerce website, and then eventually I took over customer service and was our customer service manager. And then that journey just kind of evolved from there. So I'm not someone that's easily content. And so if I either see an opportunity or an area that can help, I want to be involved. So after about a year and a half, 2 years, I started then getting more involved with our sales teams, and then got involved in marketing, finance. And then he retired from the company in 2016. And then I took over as our president, and then started overseeing and leading the other parts of our company, such as our operations and manufacturing. So.
All right, so we're on the 9-year as you at the helm.
That's right.
And there were some pretty big things that you did through those years as the leader. Yeah.
So I came back to a very stable company. We were much smaller, but we had no debt. We were stable. We had cash. We had good cash reserves, but we weren't. I couldn't really see very far of a runway. So we had, it was one of those things where my dad had an experienced sales leader at the time, but he felt kind of constrained. He had a lot of really great ideas. Our staff was very tenured, had been together a long time. And so I think after getting out there, I'm a big believer in going to actually visit our clients. And so I know it sounds kind of old school, but I've probably been in over 100 studios. We support a lot of the professional labs that actually make the products for photographers. So I've been in probably 30 different professional labs. I've visited our distributors, a lot of our partners in their facilities as well as at trade shows. But through that experience, I realized that we had to really expand our product offerings. We hadn't done a lot of innovation. We had to expand our capabilities. And so that's when it came into, we started bringing in rigid boxes and getting more sophisticated with die cutting and foiling, printing. We added case making, and we just kind of grew from there. So, that was a part of that was seeing that even though we were in this very stable space, that we couldn't rely on that for the future. I mean, when I've been our president for 9 years, and I don't see retirement for myself anytime soon. So it was one of those things where we had to think about, well, how do we keep advancing, keep growing so that we can be around for the next 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and through that, there's been, in order to do that, so I heard you say earlier, right, you were buying previously you're buying and selling a lot of the product, and yep. That includes some overseas and, how to be cost competitive in that. Yep. It's a whole different ballgame then. Now I got to go, presuming I've got to go invest in this machine now to go do this, right? So you became, very lightly a manufacturer to almost all manufacturer, right?
Correct, yeah. So, we still, our photo division still has a stock line of products, and so we manufacture most of those. We do still source a small percentage of those items, just either things that we are outside of our capabilities, or there's a few items that we still do bring in from other sources. A big part of the company has always been that we are made in the USA focused, and so whenever we can, we've always looked to make it in-house or looked for a domestic partner just to support, and value and cherish, the made in the USA. So, but along that kind of journey, there were several company acquisitions. We saw whether it was a company going out of business or a company that was doing something that we couldn't do or had a capability we didn't have. So throughout the last 9 years, we've acquired 5 companies and just kind of grown in different ways. So
yeah, 5 companies. That's one every other year, right?
That was a lot. Yeah.
What gave you the wherewithal, or what was it that made you take that first step? Because that's not insignificant when you said you deal in cash or, all the above, right?
Yeah. Probably youth and inexperience. No, just it's one of those things where, I mentioned I spent 5 years working in the financial industry, and coming out of college, I had this mindset of I've got to work. Everyone's going to be coming out, working 1 million hours a week, doing all the work, doing everything I possibly can to get ahead. And then after being in corporate America for a few months, I realized that's not always the case, right? It was clear that those that are advancing do certain things, and those that are complacent do other things. And so I worked really hard, and I was promoted quickly 3 times in the first 5 years. And then and I'd actually just taken a promotion when my dad called and said, hey, I really would, if you're going to come back, I'd like it to be now, because I'm going to start retiring and phasing myself out. So my wife and I decided that this was going to be the best thing for our family long term. We moved back to Michigan, and we've been very happy since. But getting into going from corporate America to a small business, I remember it was the first month a desk came for me, and I asked one of my coworkers, I'm like, do we have somebody that puts this together? And like, yeah, you. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it was just very, very, very different, right? Mm-hmm. But after about 6 months of being working for the family business again, I loved it. Never wanted to go back, right? It was one of those things where I could see the fruits of my labor, and I could tell the more that I put in, the more I got out. Mm-hmm. And once I really understood and had a good feel for where the company was and where our position was in the market, I realized that there were things we did well and things that we weren't doing very well. And so we spent a lot of time just looking to build infrastructure and strength to kind of give us, as much of a runway as we could, for the future. And, I think when you talk about like what makes you take that first step, what makes you think that you can do that, I think it's, I've always been a big fan of the saying, fortune favors the bold, right? And so there are so many people that have great ideas but can't take that first step. And maybe I was a little more brazen because I was so young at the time, but it was also something that, because I had a good foundation that I came back to, it was easier to make those incremental risks that weren't going to sink us, but were also where we saw a lot of long-term benefit. And not all of those were wins, right? We purchased a company in Los Angeles. We had it for 4 years. We operated it as a separate entity. Ultimately was not the right move for us. But along the way, as long as you can acknowledge that, if you take a risk, you're not going to win always, but you're going to learn always, and you're going to grow from that experience. It kind of positions you for the next one. So,
yeah, it is just it always interests me in the family dynamic, right, with business, and what makes a company successful, and or has made it successful, or what success looks like in that person's eyes. And then when, so many times when that next generation takes over, right, it very rarely is it like just status quo and median. At some point there's a breaking point. It's either skyrocket positive because it's a fresh new look, and however you want to slice that, or it's the other way where there either wasn't care given to the handoff, or it was a bad model in the first place, or whatever, you name it, right? And so to hear because your dad was still in the business when you were doing all of when you were doing these acquisitions, right? I mean, he retired, but if I recall, he was still.
He was
in it
there.
in that way.
Yeah, he was around for the first 6 years that I was there, and we went through, I think, 2 acquisitions in that period of time, and then he had stepped away. But he was still always there. He was kind of in the background. He wasn't in the day to day. He wasn't in, but he was still, he was still the majority owner of the company. He still had a lot of involvement into some of the larger decisions we made. So his involvement was still there for sure.
Yeah. And did he make any acquisitions before you?
He purchased, yes, one company.
Okay.
And that was about 10 years before I came back. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say to me, it's a testament to him, right? To have you come in, and within that 6-year window, I'll just assert that you've probably had a big to do with getting those acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
So that confidence of you coming in to doing that, and knowing that he did one in the past, but then to do that, it's a testament to the talent that he probably certainly saw in you. And
yeah, I think it's a thing where we had to establish trust, right? I mean, I think that there's one thing where I think my dad had built this company. He knew the industry really well. And even though he had the original idea to say, hey, I'm going to have Ben work someplace else, get some experience, bring all the good back. Mm-hmm. When I wanted to bring some of that good back, it was met with a lot of resistance. Like, oh, well, that's a great idea, but maybe that's not right for us, or I really like it like this. And it took a while. And I think after we had some pretty big wins, and there were some changes that were brought in that maybe he was against, but over time, when you start seeing a few wins, you start saying, okay, well, maybe I'll extend more freedoms. And then when he fully did retire, and it was one of those things where even though he was retaining ownership, I had established enough of that trust where I had that autonomy to move and build the way we needed to. And I think you were your comment you made earlier about next generations, the second generation or third generation, I completely agree with you. Like I've told people I don't trust second generation owners usually, which makes me a hypocrite because I am one. Yeah. But it's one of those things where 4 out of the 5 companies that we purchased were all second generations that came in, and either the company had flatlined or they were really going under. And
they were viable.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I think some of that comes in, my dad was very tough on me. Like I didn't have any special privileges because I was a Tyndall. He treated me like every other employee. He's in really good ways and not so good ways, and I think through that process, I think he prepared me to lead and run a company where maybe other second generation, third generation owners don't get that, right? Like they come in with either a sense of entitlement or the generation that's currently running the company feels like they're protecting them or wanting to help them. And you got to let them just go through it, the good and the bad. And, when COVID hit, that was one of those situations where my dad was basically all the way out of the company at that point. And, he, in the beginning, we didn't know what was going on. At the time, I think we had 25 employees, and we had furloughed 18, so there's 7 of us still there. It was kind of my core team, and it was one of those things where we were like, well, we got to figure this out, right? We were a packaging company that was doing mostly non-essential work, so we didn't have enough business coming in to stay open long. We were burning through cash. The 18 employees we had furloughed, we were still paying all their medical, and we needed, and this is before the government had come out with PPP loans and things like that. So we started making masks, and that was kind of one of those things where I'm sitting in this warehouse. We have 4 buildings. Our main building is about 25,000 square feet, and there's 2 of us in this warehouse, right? So it's, we have we sell a product that is a non-woven polypropylene bag. And so we have a lot of this fabric. And so I'm like, I think we can make masks out of this. And so I remember our head of sales at the time was still working from home. And she's like, that is the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard in my life. No. And then I was kind of stubborn about it. I had my wife make up a prototype. I brought home some fabric. She sewed it up. And then I showed the team. And then they're like, I don't know. And then a customer randomly called in that day and was like, hey, are you still open? Okay, great. Can you send me frame bags? I'm making masks for the local fire department. They can't get masks, and this material has, some filtering capabilities, and so I'm doing it as a service. So we quickly pivoted. Within 6 weeks, we made 40,000 masks. Oh, wow. Made and sold 40,000 masks. That was enough to kind of keep the lights on, if you will, pay for payroll, pay for medical, and then that market became saturated very quickly, and by then the PPP loans had come out, and there were other things going on. Mm-hmm. But my point is that sometimes when you're talking about like what makes you take a risk or do those things, sometimes it's out of just knowing that you're going to be okay and learn from it. Other times it's just that you have a feeling, right, and you have confidence in yourself. And so when we did that, we ended up being a success because we were able to pivot to do that, and we had the network that could help us finish, sell, distribute, and it worked out. So it's just one of those things that sometimes you end up being in a situation where, whether it is taking a risk buying a company or taking a risk and trying something, it's a feeling, but it's also a confidence in yourself, but also the team around you. And so, I've always been very fortunate to have good people that can help with any of these crazy ideas that come along. So. Well,
yeah, and I think you also had an acquisition around that time too, right?
we did, yeah. So
what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, I know, right? We in 2019, my 10-year goal was to differentiate the company, to do more than just have our one division, Tyndell Photographic. We wanted to branch out and do more general packaging, expand our capabilities, expand our clientele. Our 5-year goal was to surpass our main competitor in our photography space. Well, when we were shut down, I said, okay, well, we're going to move forward we're no longer going to be just a photography packaging company. We're going to be a packaging company. So we started Detroit Box. And then 4 months later, we had an opportunity to buy our largest competitor. So we accomplished our 5-year goal and our 10-year goal about 4 months apart, which sounds awesome, but it's and it was exciting, but it was also one of those things that it changed everything. So literally, because of the acquisition, the company doubled in size almost overnight. Mm-hmm. And then we came out of the shutdowns really in a situation where we were needing to staff up as quickly as we could, but really set us up for success. And then that also allowed us to kind of nurture that new division and slowly grow that one to where now it's a substantial part of our total net. But so a lot of change all at once, very quick. So.
Wow. So, one, on the heels of all that uncertainty around that time frame, and to lean in and double your company via acquisition, was there anybody telling you were nuts?
Oh yeah, no, it's 100%. We had when the acquisition, I had become very close with the CEO of that other company. Just my dad had always had more of a arm's length or almost adversarial relationship with them, where it was like, oh, this is our big competitor and that. I always saw them as, hey, this is a 150-year-old company that we can learn from. Mm-hmm. We can definitely partner with each other. So we forged a relationship. And then when their business was changing and they had 3 divisions, and one of them was photo, and they decided that they really wanted to exit that photo space. That acquisition was possible because of the relationship that I had with that leader. But when I brought that to my dad, in 2020, when we had been closed essentially for months, only selling masks, yes, he thought it was nuts. And then, at the time, he was in Tucson, Arizona. My parents live in Arizona for the winter. I got him to come back, and I said, hey, I want to go to Cleveland. I want to meet, with the leadership team there, talk about what this looks like. It took about a month to get him to come home. But once I got him there, we went down there, made the visit, and I think he kind of saw what I saw was, look, this is a really natural thing. Like if we're not the one acquiring this company, then one of our other competitors is going to, and I think it makes the most logical sense if it's us. So, and that was challenging, right? Like we were, even though we had some support from some of the government programs, our cash status, everything else was upside down. We had to take a very significant loan to do that, and it was 100% a risk. Like we didn't know if the world was going to turn back on in 6 months or 2 years, right? We weren't sure how the lasting impact of that. But I think the way it all played out, everything was finalized in the fall of 2020, and then really our business and our main customers in that photography space, entertainment space, travel space started coming back alive and waking up 6 months after that. And it really allowed us to have almost instant impact from that acquisition. So,
because that is nuts.
Yeah.
It's certifiable, right? If anyone were to listen to that or follow that story, not knowing where the outcome was, they might think that the end was, boy, that sucked. That cost us a lot of money and we're out of business, or something crazy, right? Because that takes, that takes some stones. I mean, that's just to put it out there, right? And some wherewithal, right? To see that through. And so, man, that's incredible. So then you still had 2 since then. That
was actually, that was the last major one that we did.
Major,
okay.
So,
yeah, so we did, we had done 4 within it was really more like a 4-year period of time where we had almost one a year. We had 2 actually in 1 calendar year. And then that one came, and that was a big one. That was they were about the same size we were. So that was not only just doubling in revenue and staff. It was also they made some products that were outside of our capabilities. So we had to bring in machinery, bring in new technology, bring in designers and estimators, and it changed the fabric of what we were. And all of a sudden, we became this really small specialty shop into more of having full blown manufacturing capabilities.
So through all that, right? How did your roles shift through all that? Perceived, real?
Yeah, no, we had that was a really unique time for me. I had a mentor for 8 years. He passed away during COVID, and then all of a sudden we doubled in size and we're growing. And for me, I feel like as a leader, I almost took a step back. I started getting, instead of thinking about the company and where we're going, I got really tactical. I got sucked back into the business. Even though we had great people, there was so much change going on and so many decisions we had to make very rapidly about product line and customers and just everything along those lines, new vendors. And so I was in that space for probably about 2 years. And then we were talking at a dad's club meeting and just, I had explained, I'm lacking, I think I'm lacking vision. I'm lacking clarity. I'm lacking, instead of having a 5 and 10 year goal, I've got like a 1 week goal. And so, that was where, you made the introduction to Vistage to me, and that's been a huge help the last 2.5 years. So,
yeah. Have you so you said like you were in that visionary seat to create the opportunity that you had, and then you shrunk back to operations manager type of thing.
Yep.
what has shifted? What was it that shifted for you to get back into that? Well, I'm being presumptuous. I know you have shifted to the looking forward, but what made you shift back?
So I think it was forcing myself to take the time to think about the business, surrounding myself with different leaders. Vistage has been a really big piece for me. It's forced me to, I get to meet, interact, network with really talented, awesome people, right? That all have amazing stories about a company they built or a company they acquired or how they got to a certain place. And it really, it forces you to think big again. It forces you to challenge yourself and think about, what am I doing about this? And so I remember the first maybe year, we have all these amazing speakers that come into these sessions and everyone's reflecting about, I'm going to take this back to my business. And I felt like I'm doing none of this. It's not even that I'm going to implement this. It's like, I'm months away from even being able to think about implementing this. But then slowly you start thinking further and further out, and you start thinking more strategically about your business again. And then it was an opportunity, part of that was building up my core team again. I have a close friend of mine that came back into my business to run our operations, and really, really strong leader, and has implemented a tremendous amount of change, but also has led through change and has been added stability to an area. We have really great members in sales and for our customer service and marketing. We've also been introduced to a lot of great people that are in consultant roles through Vistage. We've brought into the company, are helping us support and lead. And so I think a lot of that was just taking time to build out the support team again and understand, okay, well, I might know a lot about the history and about the company and about our customers and our products, but I can't do it all, right? Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't do it all. And if I try to do it all, none of it's going to be done well. So it's about positioning. It's about finding the right people that can help us thrive and do a better job than I can if I'm the one trying to do that along with 10 other things, right? Mm-hmm. So.
No, that's fantastic because it comes down to people, mm-hmm. right? To be growing the company the size of yours, and integrating all of them through acquisition and whatnot, right? It's all about who you can trust.
100%.
Yeah. We'll shift a little bit on the other roles that we play. So again, coming back to, on the, a version of, many of us have families, and obviously you do. You've mm-hmm. got kids and a wife who helps in the business in what her strengths are, et cetera. And I know you, from a roles perspective, you spend a great deal of time on an ice rink or a football field, or tell me about what roles you're playing outside of the four walls of your office.
Sure. So, I try to make my main focus, as much as the business can be demanding and can be, seem like it's everything. Like I really try to put my focus on my family first. And, I do have a very loving and supportive wife. I have 3 beautiful kids that every time I turn around are getting older and bigger, which I can't believe it. My daughter is going to be entering in 8th grade this year. Yeah. And so, yeah, right. So, but it's one of those things where, when I was growing up, my mom will remind me all the time, like, oh, well, my sister, your sister and I raised you. And actually that's true. My dad was building the business. He was gone all the time. Back then the company would do 20 trade shows a year all over the country. Oof. And so he was gone all the time. And it was one of those things where it was a lot of the time was my mom, my sister, myself. And so, when my wife and I came back to Michigan, one of the things that I really wanted was, okay, even though I knew that I was going to be working a lot, and I've been traveling a lot and doing all those things. I wanted to make sure that I had the flexibility and the time to be there for my kids, right? So, I coach football at Our Lady of Victory. I help a good friend of mine coach a hockey team in the Plymouth area. And I am the biggest fanboy ever for my daughter's gymnastics. So, and whenever I get to attend any of her meets and do those things, I never playing the sport. I don't understand all of it, but I do thoroughly enjoy just going there and being a big fan. And then in the community, I do, I'm on the executive board, as you mentioned earlier. I'm a current vice president for Dad's Club, and try to give back to our parish and our school community as much as I can. So,
yeah, and I don't want to diminish, actually most of the steps that you had in there, right? For him to say he's the football coach for our elementary team, he helped to get it off the ground. So our school, smaller Catholic school, mm-hmm. we exited really the football program a number of years ago. Just couldn't sustain it with numbers. We had a huge groundswell really based upon a group of dads like you of your kids' age, mm-hmm. To really get the program back. And that was at a cost of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 of like, hey, program, do we get new pads, new equipment? And we had to do it over a period, and had to do it mindfully because, again, we have a lot of people that have passion to get something started, but this thing needs to be a 20-year outlook, mm-hmm. to make sure this can be sustainable. And that requires people. It requires volunteerism, right? That's the nature of a Catholic school is if you want something to get done, someone's got to raise their hand to do it. And so, again, I don't want to minimize that. You're being the head coach, and you have how many assistants?
There's 8.
8, right?
Yeah.
For a fourth grade football
yeah.
program.
Yeah.
And again, it's not year round because we can't do that, but you're still, actively being, we still have to recruit. We don't have a ton of kids in our school.
Yep.
So actually recruiting that and trying to grow it up to be to a varsity level. Again, can't minimize that enough, because there were some of the old crudgemans, right? The guys that have been around a long time that were like, we've seen this dance before.
Sure.
You got to come prove to us that we can make this happen. And lo and behold, we did raise money, and we have a very great, just an incredible program. And again, you, with all the extra time you have to lead practice 5 days a week and do games and all that stuff. And then again, knowing that season's over, and then there's hockey.
Yep.
Right. So,
yeah, no, it's a lot of fun doing it. It doesn't feel like work. It's, it changes the day, right? I've got to wake up earlier if I want to hit the gym. I've got to be really on point when I'm in the office, and then I've got to leave early. I've got to get over to the field. We have practice 5 days a week, and it is a big commitment. But it's one of those things where, thankfully, there's a lot of other dads like myself that want to give back, volunteer their time, and we do it together, right? It's not one person doing it all. It's definitely a group effort, and I know that's the same at the higher levels, like our JV team. Lots of volunteers, lots of good focus there, and really everybody is united with, we want to make this a good experience for the kids, right? Yep. And it's fun. And then when our football season is over, early October, you're right, then we pivot right into hockey, and so that's and I'm not the head coach of that, so the commitment's not the same. But again, it's about, for me, the selfish part of it is I get to spend some really quality time with my other son. One does, I coach one in hockey, I coach one in football. But then I also get to, share something I'm passionate about. I played hockey for a long time. I know that I can help some of these kids get better and really enjoy the game and love it. And so, and that kind of fills my bucket with regards to that, right? So,
yeah. No, and that's where, again, multiple times coming to what being a business owner can turn into. It mm-hmm. can be all consuming. And there are times when that has to be the case.
Yep.
But to be able to make that commitment to the family and, to many other kids, right? Not just your family. Mm-hmm. You're doing for 20, 30 football kids and, 10, 15, whatever it would be on hockey. So I love that. And for me to bring home the reason that I don't suggest things that I do to everyone, right? Again, like the Vistage thing, right?
Yep.
That was a guarded, when I'm bringing someone into something else, right? Because
Sure.
you never know how people are reacting in the professional world or whatever. But the fact that I am drawn to people who give selflessly. And, that's where, again, I think, from the start, you were always like raising, you're one of the young dumb dads, right? That's like, well, here, I'll come help.
Yep.
And then you're sucked in. But that's what always drew me to you.
Sure.
Because I those that have that, and that's not, it's not totally time consuming, but it comes in waves, right? Of when we have busy doing things with, dads come, when we raise $150,000 to $200,000 and we're running an athletic program. I mean, again, it seems small, but at times it can be, with the things that are happening, can get a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so now you even stepping in further into, while I retire from the president seat, you're stepping into the vice president seat, which I think is the more important seat to get things moving. So I think, I'm thanking you for all of our community. But then adding to all those things you just defined as your roles and throwing that on top. All the while we have some other things going on in our program that's going to take some leadership and thought. We're lucky to have you.
Well, I've told this story before, and it's not to, whatever, but it was the kindergarten orientation or something along those lines, and you came up there, you spoke, and, similar to what you just said, I've always been a big believer on surrounding yourself with great people, right? Great humans, great leaders, great whatever. And hearing you talk so passionately about, getting involved in the school and the Dad's Club and what it does, it kind of drew me to it. And yes, and then I wanted to volunteer, I wanted to help, and I'm happy to do it. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those things where I still feel like I have young children, but when it comes to some of those spaces, I'm like now one of the old dads. Like I have a seventh grader, even though I have a fourth grader, that's still on the, getting towards the latter part of the ages. And so you look back and you're like, wow, I that's gone fast, but it's been fun. And it's brought, I think a level of connection to the school and the community that I wouldn't have had if I wouldn't have volunteered the time, and I'm happy I did. So.
No, absolutely. And I think that's where we also are similar in the, with even before you had the foresight to have a mentor. Whether you knew it or not back in the, whether it was whatever it was, right? I think relying on someone else, not relying on them, but right, for their information, for their guidance. And then, and that's where it was I was freely ready to have you come and do have the Vistage, right? It's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with people that are only going to lift you up. And I feel it's the same way with the Dad's Club, right? Because it's just everybody wanting to have fun, do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
It's one of those things where there are people that get to a certain point that kind of turn themselves off to learning, right? That say, nope, I'm X amount of years old. I've done this for X amount of years. I know the right answer. I know who I am. And I am not young, but I feel like I have not reached that point, and I hopefully never do. I mean, I learn things all the time. I mean, my team will tell me I'm idiots all the time, that I'm being foolish or something else on those lines, or that's the wrong direction, and it's just being humble enough to say, you know what, I get it. I'm gonna really come back. I'm gonna beat this one up. I'm gonna think about it more, and either come to the conclusion that there's a better way. And so I think the more that you surround yourself around diverse viewpoints and people with different experiences, it's just an opportunity to learn and grow. So
awesome. All right. Well, what I like to close with is to have you share with the audience a time that you call it a mistake, a failure, some decision you made that, again, one might call a failure. Sure. But that you learned from.
I would say my biggest regret, failure that I've had when I came back to work for the company that my dad had started, and I alluded to this earlier that my dad was a little bit resistant on change and whatever. It got to a point where I was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and yes, we're implementing change, we're growing, lots of wins, good things. But then at a certain point, there were several steps along the way where it's the old man's not wrong, right? So it's like there's definitely points in time where my dad would share his wisdom, his experience, and because I had been pushing for so much change and those things, you start to kind of forget and value, hey, like this is somebody who started this, he knows it from the root. Mm-hmm. Maybe he thinks about things differently. Maybe he wouldn't have done things that you did, but it doesn't mean he's wrong. And so I feel like, especially now that I've purchased the company from him, I've probably gone back to my dad more in the last year than I had the previous 5 years, where it's like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I feel like even though my dad is not a natural, he doesn't have the natural like teacher or mentor in him. He was a wealth of knowledge, and there were definitely, he's been nothing but an amazing sounding board to me now that I have acquired the company from him. And I think maybe there were points in time where I turned myself off to seeing that this is a great channel for help and guidance and sought it elsewhere. So I would say that, I mean, like there's definitely things that we've done that I would have thought about things differently if maybe I would have taken some of his guidance and feedback a little closer, at the time. But because going through the process that we did, it was hard to see it. It's like, hey, this amazing resource is right in front of you. So, sometimes what I'm saying is that, sometimes experience can seem old and dusty and maybe outdated, but it's not. It's in a lot of ways it is an amazing outlet for perspective, and I'm happy that he's still around and that he's still willing to help and give his 2 cents when I need it. So, yeah. But yeah, hope that makes sense.
That's a huge nugget, because really, what is the standard in all industry, right? Is people are closer to retirement. Oh, okay, they're just the crotchety old. They're the ones that are always saying no because I've seen this show before. And I feel like it's like 8 or 9 times out of 10 they're right. Now, granted, you don't take the leaps that you normally would, But at the same time, there's a good portion of what they're saying it's true when they've lived it 2 and 3 times over. Mm-hmm. So still hard, especially when you throw in a father dynamic when, when you're potentially trying to prove yourself or whatever the case might be. Yeah. And I'd be ventured to say I think your dad's probably enjoying it more now too.
I think he is too, as well. I mean, he was. There was a period in time in there where he had basically completely exited and had no involvement, but was still had majority ownership. There's been a lot of things even this last year after the acquisition, big investments we've had to make, where maybe he felt like, I've been out of this for so long, I don't even know how to have an opinion on this. So I think him exiting gives him the joy in that he can just have no attachment and just give advice when he wants to or when asked upon, and also I think it's done nothing but help our relationship. So
no. I know that's great, because I know that, again, when business can get in the way, that clouds what the family's supposed to be. So Ben, thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
This was
thanks for having me.
an absolute joy for me, and long overdue. How do companies that need what you have, how do they get in touch?
So we have, from our both our divisions, we serve, for our photo division, like we serve nationally. We're all over the country. We have 30 dealers. You can contact us at tyndallphotographic.com or 1-800-827-6278. And if you have any certificate and award, photo, rigid box needs, we're there. And then our other division, Detroit Box, if you have consumer packaging, puzzle and game, any sort of retail packaging needs that you're looking for, whether it's looking for a stock item in small quantities or custom runs, like DetroitBoxCompany.com has all of our contact information, and our team is always willing to engage and happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I think we'd call that a wrap.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to The Roll Call with John Glahn. If you enjoyed today's episode, Be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Remember, discovering your true role in life is a journey worth exploring each and every day. Until next time, keep defining your path and living your authentic self. This is John Glahn, signing off.